I'm Suzanne Sabilla. I'm the owner of Sabilla and Associates, which is the premier leadership and employee development company. Overcome obstacles, reframe your reality, love life, and have growth goals. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sabilla, your host of Pivot Now, where we bring on interesting, exciting, and dynamic guests who will help and share their tips, tricks, and life and business hacks to help you pivot in your life. I'm so excited to bring this guest on our show. He's absolutely amazing. You're going to love him. Let me tell you a little bit about him. So he is a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur. Oh my gosh, I just love it. You're going to love this. And so he had restructured a $2 billion business and decided to leave the company and become a fractional CEO. We'll find out more about that. What is a fractional CEO, right? Never heard of such a thing. So we'll find out more about what a fractional CEO is. Now he has all the time, freedom, and money to do what he loves. Welcome to our show, Charles Leikauf. There he is. Woo! We've got to do the hearts and the fire, you know? Oh my gosh. Let's go, Charles. Come on.
Thank you so much for having me. I love, that's probably the best introduction I've ever gotten, by the way. So really? I will definitely take it. Thank you.
That's so great. Love it. Fractional CEO. We got to know what is that about? A fractional CEO. Tell us what that is.
Sure. So I'd love to dive into it. So think of a fractional CFO, so like chief financial officer, as somebody who maybe you have a business and you can't afford a full-time CFO, right? Maybe you need that financial advice. Maybe you need a little bit of expertise. Maybe you need some hand-holding, right? But you can't afford the $300,000, $500,000 a year. A full-time, really sharp expert CFO costs. Well, you can get one fractionally or part-time or on a project basis. And so that's what me and my company does is I come in there, and when you can't afford a full-time CFO, we give you that financial clarity and that expertise you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else, but not at the same price tag because you really probably don't.
Yeah, I love it. That's such a great idea. So tell us how you pivoted from being an executive in the corporation to an entrepreneur. How did you go about doing that?
Totally by accident. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, like, oh, what do you see yourself doing? It is not this.
Really?
I think it's kind of how life works. Like things just kind of expand. And yeah. I'll tell you the story. It was 2017. I'm, living in New Jersey. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida now. I'm up there. I have a job. I move every 6 months, and I'm just, restructuring manufacturing facilities. It's working a lot. I'm 90, 80, 100-hour weeks. I've got a stomach ulcer and skin condition just from stress, right?
Oh, wow.
And one of these days, my fiance at the time, now wife, was like, hey, this lady in this Facebook group posts about needing like a budget and a forecast. You should talk to her. You do that stuff, right? And I was like, yeah, I do, but it's not worth my time, whatever. Like they can't afford me. Like just typical kind of an arrogant, like I'm too good for this response. And so I go to work next day, come home really late. My wife goes, well, did you message that lady? No, I didn't send her a message. Like, look, you don't understand. Like what I do is up here. This is a small business. Like just very flippant about it. Come home, third day. She's like, oh, Charles, did you message the lady? God bless her heart for like being like so like persistent. And I was like, well, fine. I'll message her, whatever. And so I send her a message and I say, hey, here's my experience. Here's a couple things that I can do. Let's have a conversation. And so I meet with her on a Friday and I do it over Zoom. It's 2017. I go to like one of the little phone conference rooms at my job and I talk with her. She's a small business doing a couple $1 million a year, needs a budget, forecast, and some like higher level financial advice you can't just like get. And so at the end of the phone call, I told her a price that I thought would like exclude me. She would never be able to afford it, just to get her off the phone so I could go back to my wife and be like, I was right. Look at that. I know best.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, you know what? To fix this, it'll take me about 3 months. It's $7,500 a month. So that's $22,500. And it needs to be paid today. And the lady goes, okay. I was like, oh, okay. I was going to say
That's
no.
great.
I didn't have a way to process her credit card. I didn't have like an LLC. Like I had none of the things set up.
Uh-huh.
I knew I had to write down her information, so I took her payment info and I made a Stripe account and I charged her on Monday. And the payment went through and I was like, granted, I haven't done the work yet, but I made $22,000 in 1 hour. Huh. So first of all, if your wife tells you to do something,
There you go. Listen, right? Listen to your wife.
so like my
What's that?
level of I'm the smartest in the world and I know this went down very low after that. But the second thing is I eventually signed on her and then a whole bunch of other clients. And I realized that like after a year or two of taking on people doing that, I was earning just as much as I was in my job, but I was working like a quarter of the time and like 1/100th of the stress
Yes.
to earn the same amount of money. And I was like, I don't even need this job anymore. So I was actually a full-time CFO of a middle market skincare company. And I quit that job and that was in 2021 and I've been doing that ever since. And
Wow. Love it.
biggest
so cool.
change I've ever made.
I get the heart and a fire for that. I love it. I love it. That is so great. I love that
Thank
story
you.
too, how you became an accidental, right, entrepreneur. So
Who
fantastic.
would've-
Because, as an entrepreneur, we get obstacles and challenges all the time. So how do you overcome those?
Okay, so when I first started out, I was like a freight train. I'm just going to ram into everything and hit it as hard as I can, and eventually the problem will move out of my way. And then I realized as I got a little bit older, there's a whole bunch of different ways to solve the problem, and whether it's got to go over the problem, go under, got to go around, ask a friend. And so when I face challenges today, my first thought is all right, like how do I step back? How do I look at it from an analytical lens instead of like an emotional lens? Right? Like this is silly, but sometimes I have to think of like, what if I was a client of myself? What would I tell myself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I also reach out to people who are smarter than me in the respective areas. Cause like, as an entrepreneur, I've got 7 different hats. And so maybe I'm putting on like the sales hat today. All right. Well, I have a friend who's really good at sales. Let me just call him and say, hey, this is my situation. How would you solve it? And so I really lean on my network, because if I can't figure out something, like there's plenty of things I don't know, I'm much more willing now to lean on other people who are smarter than me and stay in my lane of genius. So when it comes to new challenges, which there's a different one every month, is I really rely on the people that I know or mentors. That's like been the biggest shift for me over the last couple of years. Is someone else has figured it out, let me just go to them.
I love that. And I think that is so important, because many times we want to do things all on our own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to have mentors and a network of people that you can rely on, and people that have done this before us, right? Because there's plenty of people that have done this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That have been, like, as you say, fractional CFOs and are entrepreneurs, and can show us the ropes, so to speak, and it'll fast track our businesses as well. So that's a really great tip that you just gave of having a mentor and being in a network of people that are also entrepreneurs, that are also like taking it, to the next level. I think is so important. So this part of the show, we call it 3, 2, 1, go. And so we want to hear from you 3 tips, 2 strategies, and 1 action item.
Kind of now is the first thing I've learned with like people and relationships is to focus way more on giving than you receive. And that to me has been so huge, because it gets people focused on like relational instead of the transactional world. And like, I know I deal with money, and usually everything with a dollar sign is usually my responsibility for my clients. But when you build relationships instead of transactions, life is so much easier. So like tip number 1, be relational instead of transactional. Tip number 2, and as I'm starting to hire more people myself from the ground up instead of hiring people who hire people who hire people, is if I have issues with an employee, whether they're performance or culture fit or whatever else, it's my fault. It's always my fault. Whether I didn't spend enough time in training or education or resources or defining scope or whatever it may be, the only reason my team's not successful is me. And so even if I give them everything they need and they don't perform, well, I still hired the wrong person. It's still my fault. So for that is just taking radical accountability, especially as a small business owner. If it's not my fault, I can't fix it. If it is my fault, I can fix it. So having radical accountability, that's huge. And then the third kind of tip is, to me, you're always selling, whether it's on the show, whether it's to your partner of like, hey, maybe you should call this lady from this Facebook group, or it's to your investors or to your employees of like how your product will change people's lives. You're always selling. So learn sales, but from an emotional intelligence perspective, not from a, used carsman aggressive kind of perspective. So those would be my three like biggest tips. The next part was strategies.
Yeah, and the next one is strategy. I love those tips. Those are excellent tips. Excellent tips. I love it because it is all about relationships, right? I think a lot of times people think, oh, it's selling. It's selling my product, selling my service, and doing the transaction. And no. It's really about building that relationship and being the giver, right? Adding value and giving. I think that's so important. And I love what you said too, is that, you could be the cause of your people's performance, right? Because maybe you didn't hire the right person. Or you didn't train them correctly, or you didn't train them at all. So I think that's really important to look at as well.
You're a small business owner, it's usually the last one.
Yeah. It's like, hey, here is what we need you to do. Go to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love those tips. Excellent tips. So give us two strategies.
Two strategies that I really like. The first one is I like to focus on good, not great, or good, not perfect, or good enough for now. A lot of people, like you and I, we met at a personal branding event. A lot of people, regardless of where you're at, when you're trying something new, they get stuck on like, what's the best name, or what's the best thing, or what's the best system. Well, just focus on good enough for now. Otherwise, you'll never get it done. And ship a 1.0 or like a 0.9, and then get some feedback, and you might have to actually take a totally different direction. Every idea I come up with isn't fantastic. Usually I get fantastic after getting hammered and pushed around and saying, getting feedback. And so I focus on just getting something done, focus on good, not great. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is back to the emotional intelligence. A question I've been asking people a lot lately is, how do you know that? And so people have assumptions based upon business or their finances. As a fractional CFO, I deal with a lot of people with money, and they have different kind of beliefs. And I like to ask, like, how do you know that to be true? Right. And then I just stop talking. And so that, to me, I've learned a lot more about people's thought processes, and I can approach them from their perspective instead of mine. And I've actually been able to get a lot more results out of my clients. I've been able to communicate a lot better. And it sounds crazy, but just asking the question instead of why, which is very like intrusive. It's, well, how do you know that? And so that's been extremely powerful for me, as interesting as it sounds.
I love that question. That is really a great question to ask, is how do you know that, or how do you know that's true? And instead of the why question, because many times if you ask the why question, the person can be defensive, or maybe they don't know the reason why. So I like that. I like that question. That's a really insightful type of question to ask. So the last part of this is, give us one action item to pivot our lives forward.
So the action item is people listening to this are probably thinking, all right, I've made a change, or want to make a change, or are going to make a change, or maybe a change is right for me or not. And the thing is, the action item is just try it. Just go for it. It's never going to be perfect. It's like having kids. It's never going to be the right time. But like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It's never going to be the right time. It's never going to be the best time to start a small business. It's never going to be the right time to start the charity or the new initiative or the workout plan or the diet. It's never going to be perfect. Just do it anyhow. And when you first start out, you'll be terrible at it probably.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's how we get good.
That is so good. Yeah. So important, isn't it? I mean, because I find that too. Like a lot of times you want it to be like perfect, or it's not, oh, I'm not ready yet. Or, once I get this done, or, oh, I get my sales funnel ready, or I get this
Yep.
mastermind course done, or I get, I have to network, or I've got to have enough money, or whatever it is. Right. And like you're saying, there's never enough, you're never ready. Right. You just do it now. Pivot now, as a saying is, right? Pivot now. Yeah, I love it, love it, love it. So can you give us a story of when you actually pivoted and how that was so successful for you? I mean, you talked about pivoting from being a corporate executive to an entrepreneur. Can you give us some other examples of that?
There's almost too many to think of because, like I said before, everything I try usually doesn't work the first time. That's how I've learned half the stuff I've gotten here. So something I did about a year ago, actually a little bit more like a year and a half ago, is I've been a fractional CFO for a while. And one of my buddies approached me. He's like, hey, you think that whole fractional CFO thing works for other people? Well, what do you mean by that? Or how do you know it works for other people? And so I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I got something figured out, or maybe it just works for me. And so about a year and a half ago, I sat down with someone else and I was like, hey, they're a small accountant, owned a small accounting firm. And I was like, let me sit down with you and show you some of the things I use to get clients, some of the work deliverables that I do. And this might be able to change your business and your life, because the amount of hours that I'm working versus what I'm earning is a lot different than most people, especially like the smaller entrepreneurs, accounting firm owners. And so I showed him a couple things. I showed him how to get some customers. And, he was small. He was like a bookkeeper. He was doing like $3,000, $3,500 a month. And he went to like $9,000 a month within 90 days. But he also sold like $24,000 of consulting. And if you're used to earning $3,000 a month, that's life-changing money to you. And so I was like, oh, I guess my system does work for other people. Maybe I should help other people learn how to become a fractional CFO and kind of get clients. And so I just started doing that about a year and a half ago. And that's been a big pivot, because I've always been the executive, not so much showing people how. And that has been really, really fun. Simply because you can take like a large business and now maybe I make you an extra $1 million this year. That's cool. Probably not changing your life. You can buy an extra Lamborghini, another boat, cool. But taking like a small accounting owner, and doubling their business, like they can go on vacation, spend the time with their kids if they want to. Like that to me is way more impactful. And so that's been another pivot I've had in business over the last couple of years. And it's way more personally fulfilling to me. So again, never thought I would be here if you asked me 10 years ago.
Wow. That's really great that you're doing that. So do you do that with groups of people or groups of accountants, for example, or is it one-on-one coaching that you provide?
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
What I mean by that is there's a one-on-one component, there's a group component, there's a community, there's some digital learnings, because I don't know about all of your listeners, but some of my classes were online for college and I didn't really go to those. I like the group. I like the community. I like working with people one-on-one. You can build a baseline with anyone with digital education, but that's just the baseline. That's the bottom of the pyramid. To build the rest of it, you need that hand-holding. You need that community. You need that feedback. Yep. And so there's one-on-one, there's group, there's community, there's digital learnings. You got to have every aspect. Otherwise, people get kind of good at some things and not at others. And I may be awesome at teaching one thing in one way, and maybe someone learns in a different way. And that's why you need all the mediums. So I try and get it to where you can't not be successful regardless of your learning style.
Wow, that's really great that you have all those different components and use of different media. I mean, I like that you have the community aspect as well. So I think that is so important, because many times we want to do it alone, right? And that is where I think you come into challenges, because I think it's important to have a community that you can learn from. Right. And it actually fast tracks your career and it fast tracks your business as well. So I love that you're doing that as a community. That's great.
Thanks.
So where can we find you?
Sure. So if you're looking to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. My name is Charles Leikauf, right? If you want to learn a little bit more about how to go from an accounting firm owner or a financial executive to becoming a fractional CFO, I would check us out at Profit Surge Group. So that's Profit Surge Group. That's on Instagram and our website, profitsurgegroup.com. So depends on what you're looking for, but those would be the best places.
That's great. And we'll have all your links after our show as well, and it'll be posted and everything. Thanks so much. And do you have an offer?
Oh, so
Talk about your offer.
thank you. So realistically, if you're looking to make a large pivot, you can do it. And I got there by accident. And again, I started in 2017. It's 2024 now. So what's that for? There's 7 years of making lots and lots of mistakes. I don't learn everything on the first shot. And if you're like me and don't learn everything on the first try, if you're looking to get more clients as a fractional executive or looking to grow your own fractional kind of firm or just grow your accounting firm, we help you do that. And so my offer to any of your audiences is if they're interested or willing to learn a little bit about that, go to our website or reach out to me and we'll have a conversation with them. And even if it's not a good fit now, like maybe like, I'm still a year or two away from quitting my job, we can get them a game plan towards that direction. And so kind of like I said before, take action before it's not ready. So if you have interest, give us a call and we'll talk to you and we'll show you what that looks like. So that'd be my offer.
That sounds great. Fantastic. Love it so much. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate it. And all of the tips and strategies and action items you gave us, that was fabulous. Thank you so much, Charles. And thank you to our audience who have been watching our show. We're here every Tuesday, 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Live life abundantly. You can make your changes. Pivot now.
Change and shift your energy. Pivot